Welcome everyone to the third part of our series on generative AI brought to you by World Education. My name is Zoe Reinecke and I am a project coordinator at World Education. Rachel, yeah, awesome. It is great to see all of you who have joined us for the last two sessions. Welcome to those of you who are jumping into the series now. We are thrilled to have you here. Rachel is going to drop the links to the recordings of the last two sessions in the chat. Feel free to watch those on your own time. We also, fingers crossed, have made the chat work. So if you would like to chat to one another and socialize and comment there, feel free to do so. If you are wanting everyone to see your messages, make sure you select the everyone feature in the chat. And then if you want the panelists and presenters to see questions, make sure you hit the Q&A and we'll make sure to answer them there. During today's session, I will briefly discuss the reactions to ChatGPT in education, and then we will hear from education professionals that are currently using AI tools to support their work with adult learners. This will very much be a sprint, but I hope that you leave with ideas of how to use AI in your classrooms and with your learners. First, on a very general scale, K through 12, higher education and adult education have reacted differently to the introduction of ChatGPT, and their responses have been rooted in the different purposes of education at each level. K through 12 school districts have varied in their approaches to ChatGPT. For example, many K through 12 school districts, like Seattle Public Schools, have blocked ChatGPT access to their devices with concerns about cheating, data security, general safety, and beliefs that it impedes learning. Rachel Riggs and I dig a bit deeper into some of these issues in part one of our blog article titled ChatGPT and Jolly and AI. Oh my, what's all the buzz about it? On the other hand, New York Public Schools reversed its ban yesterday on ChatGPT, explaining that encouraging the use of ChatGPT will help students become prepared for the evolving world. In higher education, schools and educators believe that ChatGPT enables students to cheat, which hinders their learning. In response, Turnitin, a plagiarism checker, is being used to detect when a student uses ChatGPT in their writing. In adult education, there is a growing interest in equipping students with the skills to navigate and use ChatGPT to help them reach their goals and become independent learners. This growing interest was on display at the keynote AI panel held at COED this past April. Thousands of adult educators gathered to hear three different experts discuss how ChatGPT is changing adult education. Experts on this panel argued that adult learners are going to be expected to know how to use ChatGPT and other AI tools in their daily lives and jobs. This has intensified the need for adult educators to equip themselves with the digital skills needed to navigate ChatGPT, to then teach their learners how to leverage this tool. When used strategically, student learning can be enhanced. I want to assure you that AI will not replace teachers and educators. It is important to note, though, that to remain relevant and best serve students, it is essential that teachers begin to actively use AI. AI is a tool and not a teacher. As discussed in part 2 of the blog that Rachel and I co-authored, machines are great at completing repetitive tasks, but as will become evident from what the panelists here will share today, AI tools are not able to outshine teachers in developing creative approaches, leveraging resources that go beyond data sets, or adapting to new tools and technologies. Most importantly, teachers are able to build relationships with learners through socio-emotional connections that are not feasible through AI-powered technologies. For many teachers, they did not turn to education out of a love for doing repetitive tasks, but rather to creatively engage and work with students. AI makes it possible for more time to be spent with students. Now for the moment we all have been waiting for. I want to introduce you all to our guests. We have a whole range of education professionals that are represented here today who are using AI tools to enhance their ability to serve students. Javier Suarez Alvarez will discuss how he is using AI to develop tests. Anson Green will share how he is using AI to adapt technical instructions for employees. Lena Rahmi will illustrate how ChatGPT is being used to empower female learners in Lebanon. And Rachel Riggs will explain on behalf of Yenjae Roth how she uses ChatGPT to support language learners. Javier, I'll pass it over to you now.
Thank you, Zoe. So, welcome everyone. My name is Javier Suarez Alvarez. I am a research associate professor at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, and I am the project director of the Adult Skill Assessment Program. This program has started like about a year ago. Is funded by the U.S. Department of Education, and our main goal is to document the assessment needs in adult education nowadays, and to develop like an online bank of literacy and numeracy tasks to meet those needs. So far, we have started like about a year ago, and one of the most pressing needs that we are identifying is trying to bridge the academic and the workplace, trying to make sure that the adult learners are ready to face the challenges in a very uncertain and changing workplace setting. No? So if we can go to the next slide, I can show you a little bit of the work that we are doing right now using AI. So as I was saying, like we are trying to bridge the academic and the workplace. As you may know, like most of the curriculum in the country and most of the assessments, especially the ones that are approved by the National Reporting System, needs to be aligned to the CCRSAE, to the College Career and Readiness Standards. So, but at the same time, there are other standards out there, like the ONET dataset, like it's a dataset by the U.S. Department of Labor that describes thousands of occupations and the entire work activities connected to those occupations. So what we're trying to do right now in this program is trying to develop literacy and numeracy tasks that are aligned to both, in a way that we can bridge the academic and the workplace. So the way that we are doing this is by using artificial intelligence. So we are using as training data. So because to work with these AI models, we need to have a source. So the source that we are using is one of the greatest work that have been done probably in this field was done by one of our presenters here, Anson Green, and other colleagues, called the Texas Standards, that they put a group of the best experts in the country to align, to do like a human expert alignment between the academic content standards and the ONET dataset. No? So what we're trying to do is using that expertise to train our models to use, in this case, natural language processing and models like GPT. Like if we click again, I can show you an example. Yeah, so what we are trying to do is, well, here you have two examples. One example of one standard can be apply vocabulary and concepts accurately in reading, speaking, and writing. And then what we have is how that translates in the workplace, no? And can be like proofreading documents, records. So what we're trying to do is using that knowledge to create these pair comparisons. So what AI will give you, what GPT will give you, and other natural language processing models is those comparisons. But what's the key aspect? It still needs to be verified. So this is why the third step here is to present those pair comparisons to experts that they can verify whether that comparison is good, is not good, or whether there are like a better way to make that association, no, between the standards and occupations in the workplace and the entire work activities. So this is kind of an iterative process that what it facilitates is to reduce the amount of work, reduce the cost and the task that we need to present to the experts to make those comparisons. No? So once this process is finalized, we'll have the final outcome, the final output that will like a crosswalk between academic standards and the information provided by the ONET dataset. No? Like for example, whether that occupation is receptionist and what the entire work activities within that concrete work occupation are connected to the standard. No? So I would say as final remarks, we go to the next slide, I would say like the two key tips of strategies that we are learning as we work through this. I mean, I guess that nobody was expecting this huge impact. So we are kind of learning on the fly. And I would say, I will highlight that the two main aspects that we have learned so far is like everything that you do with AI requires human verification. At the end of the day, at the end of the day, we need to remember like these are probabilistic models. So basically, they're just giving what is the most likely answer, what is the most likely word based on the prompt that you are giving. So this is why it's incredibly important to make sure that we are using training data that is of high quality, that is good, like quality training data. Because if you use data that is biased, you will obviously get an answer that is biased. And that's not a limitation of the model. I mean, that's not a problem with AI. It's by knowing what are the limitations and how to overcome those limitations. No? So in GPT, for example, it was trained and we don't have access to know how the models were trained. But there are possibilities to use your own training data to make sure that the models are going to give you an answer that is closer to what you want to achieve. So I will leave it here. Thank you for your attention.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody, and appreciate coming out here. This is going to be a good session on a theme that I think we're all kind of cruising through, which is how do we keep the human in the AI? And Javier's comments about the verification element is something you're going to hear from me also. So thank you very much for joining us. A bunch of content here from Texas, which I'm happy to see, and see my Texas fans out here on the participant list. I want to talk to the instructors and instructional designers out there and talk about something that I have found to be pretty revolutionary about what we're doing in curriculum development related to ChatGPT. So listen up if you're out there as a teacher and you're wondering, how does this impact me? Because I'm going to show you some great time saving and some accuracy elements, especially for individuals that are working with integrated education and training programs, or IETs. So one of the most difficult things I think instructional designers, myself, when I was teaching, was faced with is, how do I teach technical content and simplify and create contextualized content with training information that I might not fully understand myself, or that is very complex. So if I'm teaching an IET program in medical assisting and I've got to deal with human anatomy and physiology, vocabulary and content, or if I'm dealing with logic gates and Boolean equations in industrial maintenance, or programmable logical controllers in maintenance training, I don't know what those things are myself, but I've got to teach contextualized content. So I'm going to show you what I'm doing at Tyson Foods to take technical language, much like technical language you would get from a college faculty training instructor, and not only learn to understand it myself, but also to simplify it down and be able to use it in classroom instruction. So I'm going to give you an example. We're going to walk through from the left to the right and walk through the prompts I'm using in ChatGPT to take technical, difficult language and simplify it into something that I could use in the classroom. So I'm going to take a phrase that I had to simplify. Rotate the rotary style electrical disconnect located below the HMI from off to on. Okay, I don't know what that means. So I put it into ChatGPT, and the prompt I asked was, what does this mean? That's all I put. ChatGPT tells me, find something called the rotary style electrical disconnect underneath the machine. It might be a switch that you turn. Turn the switch from off to on. Once you've done that, the electrical supply will start working. So it starts to explain what that little phrase means to me. So now I'm understanding it as the instructor. I'm like, oh, okay, this means I'm turning a switch on and off. Next step is I want to simplify it down. So I just tell ChatGPT in the next phrase, I just type succinct. And so you see that it shortens the phrase from that long piece to a shorter piece to power up the machine, locate the rotary style disconnect, It's still not simple enough. So I want to take it down step 2 or 3 to, I just type 5th grade, meaning write it for a 5th grader, 5th grade level. Now it's saying something I can work with. Turn the handle on the machine to turn the power on. So step 1, 2, and 3, I can do that in about 30 seconds, if not less. And that would take me an hour and a half if I was doing this by hand, or longer if I didn't understand it and had to research the content. So now I've done it in 20 or 30 seconds. And I didn't do it. My college intern did it, because I can assign her this task to go in there and do some of this work, which would have taken me an hour and a half or 2 hours. Now it's taking my intern. So 20 seconds. So I'm freeing up time considerably. And the whole time in my mind, I'm wondering, is this still accurate? Am I getting this correct? So the next step 4, I look at it and say, is this clear in the context? And so you see in bold, I took turn the handle on the machine, and I wanted to tell the students where the handle was. So I said, turn the handle on the cabinet of the palletizer. Now the palletizer is a robot, and we're teaching our low-skilled team members how to use robots. So we've already taught the term palletizer. They know the term. They know the term cabinet. We've taught that term. This is an ESL class. So I want to be able to locate and tell them where this knob is. It's on the palletizer cabinet. So I added that myself. So there's a subject matter expert piece. And then I run it by the technician to make sure that Anson didn't screw this up or ChatGPT didn't screw it up. You could run it by your technical faculty member. And he looked at it and said, approved. I've done 263 of these, and I've only had 2 of them that were disapproved. So it shows you the accuracy of what's happening here and the speed that we can turn this stuff around and use it in the classroom. So to summarize, I'm using this to simplify technical language that I don't understand. I'm adjusting the reading level down. It seems like 5th to 6th grade is the sweet spot. You can't go much lower than that with technical language. And then I'm always, like Javier said, verifying the accuracy with an expert, because we can't let the AI run away from us. So a great way to find some efficiencies. The biggest gripe with IET programs is developing contextualized curriculum, and we've got a great solution for it here with ChatGPT.
Well,
Nina.
thank you, Anselm, for the great prompts and output. So now I'm going to walk you through how we can use it in activities in the ESL classroom for adult education. Hello, I'm Lina. I'm an ESL instructor, L&D facilitator for You Speak. And it's a nonprofit organization that supports women and youth in education, livelihood through various educational programs. I am an instructor in the TWEE program, which stands for Teaching Women Enhanced English, which also enhances women English communication skills, advocacy skills, and it's funded by the US Embassy. So here in the next slide, you can see how I, with the students, with the ladies in my classroom, asked ChatGPT to write a poem for us, and we were so proud of the outcome. So I asked the ladies in my class to write a simple poem for International Women's Day, and to include in it their special touch with the TWE, mentioning of the TWEE program and the impact of the TWEE program on women empowerment in Lebanon. But of course, it was very difficult for the students to do so. So they wrote something very simple like, women are not silhouettes that we gaze at, women are not remembered just on 8 March, and so on. So what we did was use this chatbot to try to prompt it and write the poem. So we started with a very simple prompt: act as a female student in the TWEE program, write a short poem about the impact of the program in empowering Lebanese women in many fields. Of course, the output was a good poem, but it was not specific to our program. It was not, didn't mention the topics we cover in the classroom. And of course, it was very general. So what we did was, of course, with the students, I'm working with them along the way to refine the prompt using a specific framework. And the framework is the CD framework by Dr. Gianluca Moro, which is context, instruction, details, and input. So we put the context, which is we explained a little bit about what we're doing: act as a poet, write a poem. So this is the instruction: write a poem about the impact of the TWEE program in empowering women. And of course, we explained about the program, and then we put some details. So this will be the detail. We ended the prompt with putting our input, or the input of the women. So we ended the prompt by saying something or writing something like this: now I'm going to share with you my poem. Rephrase this poem to adapt it to the TWEE program that we talked about previously in the prompt, and we put the input. So the output was great. It gave us a poem that was refined to our specific to our program, and it contained all the elements, but it was long. It contained some vocabulary words that were not simple. So what we did was ask again ChatGPT to simplify it and fix the rhyme in the last stanza, because it didn't have there was something wrong with the rhyme. Also, we had a great poem, as you can see here in the output. And of course, the students took the poem, put their special touch, changed the structure of some sentences, or like Lebanese women are on the rise. So we put we as Lebanese women. So they put their special touch, put it on Canva, were very proud of it, and published it on social media, shared it on social media. So the takeaways is that the ChatGPT is a lifesaver, not just a time saver. So it saves the time of the teacher and the students. It acts as a scaffold to the students. It helps me as a teacher, as their instructor, to guide them through the way. So if the students would ask me to write the poem for them, or to help them writing the poem, I'm not a good poet. So it gave them very good output, very good poems, and they were able to communicate with it and to have a good output with, of course, my guidance. And of course, it increased their creativity, because the output was not just the chatbot. The chatbot doesn't work on itself. It is the communication between the students and the chatbot that gave us this good poem. And of course, refine the prompt using frameworks, and the CD framework is a great framework to use. So thank you. Now I'll pass it to Rachel.
Hi, everyone. Thank you guys so much. I'm just so excited that we had so many awesome people here to speak today. We also have an amazing instructor that we want to highlight, who's doing great work with ChatGPT. She couldn't be here today because she's visiting family in South Korea, and I think it's like 2 in the morning there. So, but she did give me permission to share her work. So I am here representing Yenjae Ra, who is an instructor, an ESL instructor and professional development trainer at Austin Community College. She's also the founder and director of Bridge International Christian Academy, a 501c3 nonprofit weekend school for Korean immigrants. Bika, which is her nonprofit, their mission is to provide bilingual and bicultural literacy education for students with a biblical worldview and promote immigrants' parents' involvements in their children's learning. In addition, since 2021, the Academy provides free online ESL tutoring to North Korean refugees and defectors who are settling in South Korea. So Yenjae has been working with ChatGPT in the classroom, both as a teaching tool and directly with learners. She's used it in a few different ways. In one sense, she's using ChatGPT as a translation tool. And unlike other translators, it can produce several languages at once. So you can see in the screenshot, it was able to produce several translations of her announcement about class cancellation. So it's a kind of a quick and easy way to get those translations and get a message out quickly to her students about class being canceled in a language that they can understand. Probably not a perfect translation, but likely better or more understandable for them than the English version. Yenjae is also using it to develop learning materials that are highly relevant and representative of her learners. Here you're seeing an example of Yenjae generating a reading passage that is a love story about Yenjae, using her own name, but to develop this interesting story. So she developed a love story about Yenjae, a Korean girl, in which Yenjae's Mexican-American boyfriend's mother, Elaine, wants a Spanish-speaking daughter-in-law. Yenjae's friend in the story is going to use K-drama to change Elaine's mind. So you can see how generating highly relevant and culturally diverse texts like this could support learner engagement. Finally, Yenjae facilitates learners in their use of ChatGPT, leveraging it as a tool to save her time on providing writing feedback and to engage learners in recognizing their own patterns of errors. In the first column of the table that you're looking at, well, not the first is name, but in the second, you're seeing learners writing assignments. That's their first draft. The second column is AI suggestions. So this is saving her kind of that first pass where she's feeding their first draft into ChatGPT, getting feedback, and then putting it into this document for her learners. This is a Google Doc. And then in that final column, the learners themselves identify the differences between their first draft and the AI suggestions. And what Yunjae is really intentional about, and why I was so excited to share her work, is that she is very concerned with engaging learners' critical thinking throughout this process of using generative artificial intelligence, which we think is a great model and a great way that this can be used beyond just generating stuff. But it can also be used to develop other skill sets like critical thinking and even digital literacy, which she says, there's a whole range of digital skills that learners can engage in if they are using a tool like ChatGPT. Yunjae's recommendation is to engage the chatbot in a dialogue, refining the output, and to provide plenty of detail in your prompt. So thank you, Yunjae. We are excited to have you sometime to share your ideas yourself, and I appreciate you letting us share them here. So I want to highlight, we heard today several educators and their strategies. I wanted to share with you guys that we at the EdTech Center at World Education have monthly EdTech strategy sessions that go from September to May. This time the EdTech Bytes stepped in for the EdTech strategy sessions because this was such an important topic to cover. But the EdTech strategy sessions do exactly what we've done during this webinar. They highlight the stories and strategies of amazing professionals in our field. And they are an initiative of the Ideal Consortium. And I have to give a shout out. You've seen chat about Texas. We've seen a lot of Texas today. They are an Ideal Consortium state, and we have an amazing connection with Michelle Vick, who has connected with us with many of our speakers that have joined us today. So the Ideal Consortium is a wonderful community of practice with several member states, and we encourage you to look into it if your state is not yet an ideal state. And we also encourage you to attend our EdTech strategy sessions to hear more incredible strategies about how to leverage EdTech and increase digital equity. We want to hear your stories. So maybe you could get a spot in the EdTech strategy sessions. So we have developed a survey because we know that our 4 educational professionals that just spoke are just 4 of many who are using generative AI tools in their work. And we really want to explore how these tools are being leveraged. So we ask you to fill out this survey. You can scan the QR code on the screen, or you can go to that bit.ly link. It's a /AI for adult ed. And it should maybe take you about 10 minutes, but we just basically want to hear what tools are you using and how are you using them and what are your thoughts? We want to collect that information from this incredible audience. So we hope you'll fill out the survey and share how you're using generative AI in your work. I also want to mention that a podcast episode came out today. You heard from Javier, who is on the ASAP research team at UMass. The ASAP research team is part of a large research network funded by IES called the Create Adult Skills Network. And today they just put out a new podcast episode in their Talk podcast featuring yours truly and another amazing professional, Dr. Katie Brown, talking about ChatGPT and adult education. So we hope you'll check that out if you want to hear more about ChatGPT. And of course, we hope to see all of you next Friday for our final webinar in this webinar series, Humans in Focus. And we're going to talk about kind of boiling all of this down. We went from like the very basics of this technology. And then we talked a little bit about the issue of, openness, human originality, plagiarism with Jeff. Now we've heard stories and actually use cases from amazing professionals in our field. So we're going to wrap it all up next week by really talking about what does this mean for us as humans, for our learners as humans, and what will it mean to keep equity and ethics in focus. So I hope you'll join us for that final webinar. I'm so glad you joined us today. And can we just, let's clap for the fact that how many of us, like 4, 5 educators just took 5 minutes each to talk. And I think that's a pretty incredible feat. So thank you to our speakers today. Thank you, Zoe, for bringing starting the conversation for us. And thank you all for attending and being so interactive and engaged. I see some raised hands. I'm going to stop the recording and would love to take some questions and